Welcome back. All right, so today I want to talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Tampa Bay Lightning have had their struggles, and of course, yesterday it feels like the full blown panic has really reached a crescendo. Now, we've had down moments with Tampa Bay in previous regular seasons. We've had a regular season, I want to say it was 2021, where they didn't look very good going into the playoffs, and then they won the Stanley Cup. And this is a team that is in third place, which is the position they were in previous times they've won Stanley Cups. Finishing third in the division, not a problem for Tampa Bay. So they haven't been a juggernaut in the regular season since 2018, 2019. And we remember what happened there. But eventually what happens with contenders and champions is their standing erodes and things just gradually start to fall apart. There are some teams where it falls apart quickly. There are other teams where it takes a while. Now, for Tampa Bay, are we starting to see those cracks? Are we starting to see a team that is not likely to go very far in the playoffs? Could this be a situation where Leaf fans are saying in April, boy, it ended up being a blessing we got Tampa Bay in the first round because clearly they're not the same team they were a couple of years ago. And I'm not sure what's going to happen. I know it's going to be entertaining. Right now, Tampa Bay's record is 37-21-5 with 63 games played. They're 5 points back of the Toronto Maple Leafs for second place in the division. They're 11 points ahead of a three-way tie for fourth between Ottawa, Buffalo, and Florida. And so they're pretty comfortably in third. And when we look at their schedule coming up, they should win some games there. It really is. It is a situation where I can understand some of the panic, but at the same time, you don't want to overreact, right? Now they win the cup in 2020 and 2021, and those Stanley Cups get derided, and people try to diminish them, but they still won back-to-back Stanley Cups, so that's more than any team not named Detroit or Pittsburgh has done in a very long time. 2022, they go back to the Stanley Cup Finals, so that's a lot of mileage. That's about an extra season worth of hockey played between those three playoffs. And it's a lot. It's a lot over a short period of time. And I think that might be part of what we see with some of the players on this team. So we don't know how they're going to do in 2023's playoffs, but they're going to make 2023's playoffs. There's virtually zero chance they miss the playoffs this year, unless over the next 19 games they win like two. If they win like two and they don't get anything in extra time, then sure, they end up missing, but that's highly unlikely. So when we look at the exits since the 2021 Stanley Cup, this is what they're up against, and a lot of this is for cap reasons. Andre Palat, who's playing very well right now for Tampa. Blake Coleman, who's playing well for Calgary. Ryan McDonagh, who has helped Nashville's blue line. Yes, Nashville's fallen out of the playoffs and all that, but I wouldn't put that on McDonagh. He's been good. Yanni Gourde has been very good for Seattle. Tyler Johnson's playing in Chicago. He's, of course, had a lot of injury issues. Barclay Goodrow is with the New York Rangers. David Savard's in Montreal. Jan Rudis in Pittsburgh. Matthew Joseph's in Ottawa. Pretty popular in Ottawa as well. Luke Schenn moved on to Vancouver. Now he's in Toronto. There were some rumors about him going back to Tampa at the deadline. That didn't happen. And McElhinney. Curtis McElhinney, the backup goaltender. He didn't play a minute during the playoffs, but still, he was the backup goaltender during the regular season. So, overall, that's a lot of players. And, yeah, I mean, McElhinney, I would say Elliott's probably an upgrade over McElhinney at the backup spot. But outside of that, it's tough to replace a McDonagh. It's tough to replace Palat. It's tough to replace Gourde and all these guys without going over the salary cap, right? So I think there's some of that erosion that's taken place as much as Julien BriseBois tried to keep things where they're a contender. So the way that this 10-game skid gets started, and I use that term even though the first game in this, they actually outplayed their opponent. They lost 1-0 in a shootout at Arizona. So it's that rare game where both goalies get a shutout. Ingram, 47 saves. Elliott, 26 saves. It was a fantastic game for Ingram. And, then the shootout win goes to Arizona. Then they lose in Vegas 5-4. They led 2-1 in the first. Kucherov and Stamkos were both -3 in that game. Hedman a -2. And Kucherov and Stamkos, their overall game this year. Kucherov's offensive numbers have been great. But overall, they're not getting the types of numbers out of those lines that they normally do. Then they go home. They win 6-1 at home against the Anaheim Ducks. They led 4-0 after the second. And that's a bit of a laugher, and you need that, right? So that's 1-1-1 over that 3-game span there. They outshot Anaheim 44-25. And yeah, there really wasn't any doubt in that one. And then they lost 6-5 in overtime against Buffalo. This was the shocker because they had a power play in overtime. They trailed 3-1, they trailed 4-2, they trailed 5-3. They came back 3 different times. And it looked like they'd win in overtime, but then Lyubushkin, of all people, gets the shorthanded goal at 1:41 of overtime, and shocker of all shockers, they lost against Buffalo. Then they go to Detroit, they win 3-0. They had no business winning that game. Vasilevsky, 45 saves, steals that one from Detroit. Maybe part of the reason why Yzerman decided to sell is that game. They led 2-0 after the second, and Vasilevsky brings it home. Again, they had no business winning that game. And then they go to Pittsburgh and they lose 7-3. They led 2-1 after the first in that one. They trailed 7-2 after the second period. So that second period was absolutely ugly. But you could take that in isolation and say, all right, so this is just a really bad period of hockey. They can't be this bad. Pittsburgh more desperate for victories than Tampa at this stage. It makes some sense. Then at home they lose against Florida. So in the Battle of the State of Florida, they lose this one 4-1. They trailed 3-0 after the first. So you come off of a game where you allow 6 goals in the second period here. You allow 3 goals in the first here. It's sloppy, but they did outshoot, or they got outshot in that one as well, 41-29. So you're looking for them to bounce back. Well, they bounced back with another loss. They lost in overtime against Pittsburgh 5-4. They led 1-0 after the first, and Zucker gets the winner at 2:13 of overtime. So it just feels like things aren't getting necessarily better for Tampa Bay, right? Then they lose 5-3. They scored first. They allowed the next 5. Stamkos a -3 in that one. So really, in general, it's understandable that Stamkos and the boys would get benched in the third when you're a -3 through the first 2. You're not helping the team, right? And then last night / yesterday afternoon, they lose 6-0 against the Carolina Hurricanes. They allowed 2 goals in each period. Very, very consistent throughout that game. The Canes' power play went 4 for 5. Now, Carolina's power play has been rejuvenated, it would seem, with the addition of Gostisbehere, but you still shouldn't allow 4 goals on 5 power play opportunities. And in general, what's been going on with Tampa as well is they've been leaving their goaltenders hung out to dry. The numbers, and we'll get to the numbers, haven't been great in net. I'm not saying the goaltenders have been playing great, but the blue line in front of them just has not been helping them out. So over their last 10 games, Stamkos has 3 goals and 4 assists, and he's been a minus over that period as well. Brayden Point's been excellent. He's one of the really the most consistent forwards for Tampa Bay, maybe their most consistent. 7 goals, 6 assists, 13 points. And Kucherov, 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points. So that's your top line. The scoring outside of that top line has not been enough. So you've got Hagel with just the 3 assists over his last 10 games. Nick Paul, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. If they're going to get this going, they need more goals from Hagel and Paul. Killorn with 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. And then you've got Jeannot with 2 assists since coming over. Cirelli, 3 goals for him. Asimont hasn't recorded a point yet. He was picked up from San Jose, of course. And then on the fourth line, you've got Ross Colton, 3 goals and an assist from him. Belmar with a goal, and Corey Perry with 2 goals and an assist. Clearly, Corey Perry right now, not the player that he was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and all that. He is strictly bottom 6 at this point. And the production just hasn't been enough. And then you look on the blue line, you've got Hedman with 2 goals and 4 assists for 6 points over their last 10. Perbix with 4 assists. Sergachev with 6 assists. Bogosian a goal and an assist. Cole with 1 assist. Fleury doesn't have a point. Chernak's not on the list because he was injured the last game, wasn't in the lineup. He is expected to return for their next game. Hedman's expected to play in the next game as well. At least that's what I've seen so far today. We'll see if that changes. Vasilevsky over their last 10, 2-3-2 with an .890 save percentage. Elliott 0-2-1 with an .875 save percentage. So again, the goaltending hasn't necessarily been where you want it to be, but the blue line really leaves them hung out to dry. Those 6 goals in the second period, the 3 goals in the first period here, it's just breakdown after breakdown. And it feels like with Tampa Bay, once it starts going the other way, they aren't really answering the way you'd like them to if you're a Tampa fan. So their upcoming schedule gives you an idea that they're going to get some wins. Tomorrow night, they're at home against Philly. They should win that. I'm saying should, not that they will. Should is the key term here. Then they're at home against Vegas. The asterisk means above the playoff line. And then on Saturday, they're at home against Chicago. So that's 2 winnable games in the next 3. If they lose against Vegas, but they win the other 2, it still puts them in a position to be, say, 39, 22, and 5. They're still in an excellent position. They'd be 17 games above 500. So, and then on Sunday, they're at home against Winnipeg. So that's back-to-back. May not be that easy. Winnipeg should be playing desperate hockey. Then on Tuesday, they're at New Jersey, and Thursday, they're at New Jersey. This is really going to tell us whether or not Tampa Bay can pull out of this, because they've got back-to-backs against New Jersey. In New Jersey, they have a Saturday game at home against Montreal, and then Sunday, they're at home against New Jersey. All 3 games they have against the Devils basically scrunched into a 4-day period. So if New Jersey, who's playing really, really well right now, comes in and squashes them for 3 in a row, we may have a different conversation about their position in third. But I think they should get points against Montreal, Chicago, Philadelphia, and when you come up with how many points they should get, and then how many points the teams beneath them would have to get to catch up, it does get a little bit daunting. So after that, they then on Tuesday are in Montreal. So they've got 2 games against Montreal and 3 against New Jersey. If you're a Tampa fan, you might get tired of seeing the Devils and the Canadiens. And then they're at Ottawa, they're at Boston, they're at Carolina. So that's a 4-game road trip where they should start off with a win in Montreal, based on where Montreal is and where Tampa Bay is. Ottawa, we'll see. And then you've got Boston and Carolina. And then they're at home against Washington to close out the month on that Thursday. So 7 of their next 13 games are against teams that are above the playoff line, but 2 of them are against teams that are 3 points out, that being the Ottawa Senators and the Washington Capitals. With what Washington did at the deadline, the expectation would be by that point, by the end of the month, Washington's kind of out of it, may not have a lot left to play for, but they've won 2 games since they sold at the deadline. And for Ottawa, of course, they've won 5 in a row. So those are not going to be easy games. They've got Ottawa here. You've got Philadelphia and Chicago where they're below the playoff line. 2 against Montreal below the playoff line. But they'll also be playing probably pretty loose, pretty comfortable, pretty relaxed. And for Tampa Bay, it does feel like they start squeezing their sticks a little harder. And it's been a difficult run for them lately. I would not be surprised if 2 weeks from now they've turned this around and this video is a distant memory collecting dust. But we'll see, because it does feel like this is a little different than previous seasons. We look at the depth this team has. They don't quite have the star power that they necessarily did the last time they won the Stanley Cup. This is a team that doesn't have the kind of depth overall that I think they had in 2021, which is part of how the salary cap works. And I know there's people who don't like it. There's people who do. I understand it. Things are cyclical in the National Hockey League. It's an argument I've been having since I think the first time I had the argument about that was about when I was about 15, 16, was talking about how things in the NHL tend to kind of cycle. Teams are bad for a while, they're good for a while, and it, kind of goes in circles. And for Tampa Bay, they've been very good for a long time. So this might be a down year. Again, we'll see come playoff time what ends up happening. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is the year that Tampa Bay maybe loses early in the playoffs? Is there an issue where the guys who've been through all 3 of these cup runs, so you're getting into guys like Point, Stamkos, Kucherov, Hedman, Sergachev, are they tired? Is this just a situation where it's a lot of hockey and eventually it catches up with them? They got bumps and bruises and injuries that they may not have enough of an off season to really truly rest and fix. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.